Today we're talking about how to use context clues to figure out the meaning of words and phrases in a text. Let's start with what you already know. You know that you can use the words and sentences surrounding an unfamiliar word to help you understand its meaning. These helpful hints are called context clues. You also know that authors use figurative language like similes and metaphors. Remember, similes compare two different things using the word like or as. Metaphors directly compare two things by saying that one actually is the other. Now let's look at what you need to know about using context clues to understand unfamiliar words, including figurative language. Let's start by taking a closer look at context clues. Suppose you read this passage. "You've got a spider on your head," Marley shouted. Dion started to scream, but stopped. It was April 1st. Marley was trying to deceive him, and he wasn't going to be tricked. Now, you might not know what deceive means, but you can add together the clues April 1st and tricked to figure out that deceive means to fool or trick. Makes sense, right? We can follow similar steps to understand figurative language like similes and metaphors. Writers use similes and metaphors to make language more interesting by comparing one thing to something very different, like a blanket and snow. Looks like these guys are still stuck on spiders. To figure out what similes and metaphors mean, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. What is being compared? 2. How are those things alike? And 3. What do the context clues tell me? Now let's read a short story with figurative language. Then we'll use our 3 questions to help us figure out the meaning of unfamiliar words and phrases in the story. Let's go! Lucky. Esperanza shivered as she looked up at the bruised sky. The dark clouds were a clear sign that a severe storm was approaching. She heard a clatter of hooves and turned to see her brother Mateo directing the goats toward the barn. "Where's Lucky?" she shouted, noticing that her favorite goat was missing. Lucky and Esperanza had been friends since the day Lucky was born. Esperanza had nourished Lucky with a baby bottle and sometimes even dressed her up in outgrown clothes. "I couldn't find her," Mateo shouted back. Esperanza raced down the porch steps and into the field. "I'm going to search." 10 minutes and avoid the arroyo, Mateo instructed her, and Esperanza nodded, well aware that the dry creek bed was dangerous when a storm was in the area. Tree branches twisted above her like snakes as she dashed through the woods, the wind howling and whipping her hair. "Lucky!" she called. Suddenly, she heard a miserable moan and saw Lucky with her hair tangled in thorn bushes, unable to leave the spot. Esperanza hurried over to her pet and freed Lucky from the bushes. The two rushed back to the barn just before the storm hit and rain poured over the land. Good thing Esperanza arrived in time. Now let's look at the language in this story. Here on the right is the story. On the left, we'll see the questions we can use to help us figure out the meaning of unfamiliar words and phrases, including figurative language. Our first metaphor comes right at the beginning. Esperanza shivered as she looked up at the bruised sky. So we need to ask, what is being compared? You got it. The sentence compares the sky to a bruise. But why? How are the two things alike? Well, we know a bruise is purple or black and is unpleasant looking. Sometimes the sky can be dark and unpleasant too. Okay, let's see what the context clues tell us. The next sentence says, that there were dark clouds and a severe storm was approaching. That would definitely make the sky dark and unpleasant. So, we can add this information together to understand the metaphor. The dark clouds in the sky look purple or black because a storm is coming. Next, we come across the Spanish word arroyo. There's no comparison, so let's check for context clues. In the next sentence, there's a definition of arroyo: a dry creek bed. Sweet! This one was handed to us on a silver platter. Here's a simile: tree branches twisted above her like snakes. We need to ask, what is being compared? Oh, snakes! The writer is comparing tree branches and snakes. How are they alike? We know that snakes move in a twisting motion and often make people feel nervous. We also know that branches are long and sometimes grow like snakes. Let's see what the context clues tell us. We know that the wind is howling and whipping Esperanza's hair. Finally, if we add wind to long twisted tree branches, they just might look like snakes moving in the wind. Nice work! Easy as 1, 2, 3. I couldn't resist. Today you learned how to use context clues to figure out the meaning of unfamiliar words and phrases. You also learned how to figure out the meaning of figurative language like similes and metaphors in a text by asking yourself, what is being compared? How are these things alike? And what do the context clues tell me? Fantastic work! If you want to see this again, you can replay this. If not, see you later.